Welcome to Through a Glass Darkly Radio. You are listening to us on United Public Radio. The intro music for this episode is Mark of the Doomslayer by Karl at White Bat Audio. All right, welcome back, everybody. It's been a pretty busy weekend for me. Let me just get through some of these comments. Uh-oh. I don't know why there's a question mark, but how you doing, Gray Al? All right, so a few things, a few quick announcements, and then we'll get to it, the main kind of stream of events. So this weekend, I had got like 4 episodes in, 3 from 2 experiencers in the Hudson Valley. Really good stuff. Chris and Sean O'Leary. Their stuff was too hot for the Good Trouble show. So too much trouble for good trouble. So they're going to appear in my show. It's pretty good stuff. Also, I just recorded yet another video with Nathaniel Gillis. So I kind of got 4 episodes recorded this weekend. Very happy about that. Oh, the other thing, and this is just a standard announcement. If you are subscribed or you think you are subscribed to this channel, YouTube has other things in mind for you. So please, if you'll just indulge me and go confirm if you think you're subscribed, that you are still subscribed, please do that. I have 4 documented instances right now where people thought they were subscribed. They were subscribed and YouTube arbitrarily unsubscribed them. I don't know if it's an algorithmic issue. I don't know if it's some instance of shadow banning. I don't know what it is, but it's starting to get really old. Also, if you've watched this channel in the past and you still haven't subscribed, I would appreciate it very much if you did. So anyway, wanted to get that out of the way. Oh, the other thing, this is actually really, really important. So this radio show is actually a lot more successful than my YouTube channel is. So on a weekly basis, I'm getting like between 500 and 600,000 listeners, watchers across, radio, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, all sorts of different platforms. So they tell me it adds up to between 500 and 600K. So because of that success, I am going to be they're going to be moving me to Saturday night starting next week. Saturday night apparently is a much more trafficked night for this sort of stuff. It's going to be at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, and 9 p.m. Central Time. So, when I schedule the next topic and all that good stuff, it will have all those details, but please do show up on Saturday night instead of Sunday night going forward. So it's good news. It's not bad news. They tell me that I will get to 1 million or more much quicker if I kind of go to that slot. So anyway, let's just see what comments they got. Okay. Yeah, you can find Semivan on LinkedIn. He's definitely there. Okay. Yeah, I have not. I've been so busy with there's a bunch of other projects that I'm going to release my second anthology sometime reasonably soon, because I finished it in 2019 and it's just been sitting on my hard drive for a long time. So I updated it this weekend. I am kind of working on the cover today. And then thank you, Janie, for checking. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going through this. Okay. All right. So I'm working on that. So that's something that will come out soon. I've decided I have like 50 short stories or something like that that I've sold. So I'm just going to start putting those out in anthologies so that I can just get them out into the world because they're just sitting or, they're not doing anything. So I figure I'll just clean everything up, put it out, and allow other people to enjoy them. All right. So now it's time for our regularly scheduled program, Skinwalkers. Let's get started, folks. All right. In the vast tapestry of Native American lore, few figures are as terrifying and mysterious as the Skinwalker. Originating in Navajo, Dene mythology, a Skinwalker, or Yi Naudalushi, meaning with it he goes on all fours, is understood to be a malevolent witch capable of transforming into animals, possessing creatures, or disguising themselves as an animal. Far from a mere campfire tale, the legend of the Skinwalker is a deeply ingrained aspect of Navajo culture, one treated with genuine fear and strict cultural taboo. Traditional Navajo are often reluctant to even utter the term Skinwalker around outsiders, both due to cultural sensitivity and a belief that speaking of these entities might draw their attention. In this research, we'll explore the origins of the Skinwalker legend within Navajo mythology, compare it to similar shapeshifter lore found in other Native American traditions, examine modern sightings and notable alleged encounters, including the infamous events at Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, review any government or investigative involvement, and analyze the phenomenon's cultural and factual underpinnings. The goal is to provide a comprehensive, serious overview that could serve as the backbone for a 2-hour episode, one that treats the subject with respect and factual accuracy, avoiding Hollywood-style sensationalism or pop culture fiction. All right. Navajo witches and the witchery way. Skinwalkers in Navajo culture. In Navajo tradition, skinwalkers are not monsters or cryptids in the typical sense, but rather human witches who have chosen to turn away from the light and embrace evil. Navajo spirituality acknowledges a dark counterpart to the positive work of medicine people. Those who practice harmful witchcraft are known as Auntie Genia or Genai, and the Yi Nuld Lushi, the Yi Nuld Lushii is one of the most feared varieties. These witches are viewed as the antithesis of Navajo values, wielding perverted ceremonies and magic to cause harm, in direct contrast to the healing performed by medicine men and women. By Navajo law and custom, engaging in witchcraft is among the worst of crimes. It represents a profound betrayal of the community. In fact, historically, suspected witches could face deadly retribution. When someone becomes a witch, it's said they have forfeited their humanity and their right to exist. This notion was brutally illustrated in the Navajo Witch Purge of 1878, during which about 40 people accused of witchcraft were killed by Navajo authorities in an attempt to restore harmony after years of suffering and turmoil. The purge came on the heels of the Navajos' disastrous forced relocation, known as the Long Walk to Fort Sumner, in the 1860s, a period when many Navajo felt that witches among them had caused the tribe's misfortune. When the people returned to their homeland and conditions improved, they sought out those blameworthy of practicing the witchery way, culminating in the 1878 purge. This dramatic historical event underscores how real and threatening the concept of malevolent witches was and is within Navajo society. Becoming a skinwalker, the witchery way. How does one become a skinwalker in Navajo belief? The transformation is not accidental. It's a deliberate initiation into evil. According to both oral tradition and recorded accounts from Navajo and researchers, an aspirant must commit the most heinous of acts as a prerequisite. Often cited is the requirement of murdering a close relative, such as a sibling or parent. Other gruesome transgressions are frequently mentioned, as well as acts like necrophilia, grave robbery, and desecration of sacred sites or corpses. By performing such taboo atrocities, the individual is thought to extinguish their humanity and fully embrace supernatural evil. This is the initiation into what Navajo doctrine calls the witchery way, a path devoted to using spiritual powers for harm and personal gain. Once this dark rite is completed, the newly initiated witch is believed to gain special powers, prime among them the ability to shapeshift into animal forms at will. The skinwalker is often described as donning the literal skin or pelt of an animal, which is where the English term skinwalker comes from, and through dark rituals, transforming into that creature. Traditional accounts say the preferred forms are fierce predators, wolves, coyotes, foxes, mountain lions, bears, or even birds of prey like owls. By taking on an animal shape, the witch can move swiftly and secretly, prowling around far-flung communities without being recognized. One early anthropologist, Clyde Clutchone, noted that Navajo skinwalker tales usually involve nighttime activities and swift creatures, wolves and coyotes especially. The skinwalker's domain is the darkness. Beyond shapeshifting, skinwalkers are attributed a suite of supernatural powers. Navajo lore and those of neighboring tribes who share the belief claims that skinwalkers can run unnaturally fast, sometimes even described as keeping up with moving cars, and have the stamina to cover huge distances quickly. They are said to be able to mimic voices of loved ones or sounds of animals to lure people out of their homes, a tactic to isolate and attack their victims. Some stories credit them with mind control or psychic influence, using evil charms or spells to instill fear or illness in intended victims. Physical strength, beyond that of normal humans, is another trait attributed to skinwalkers. Their eyes are often described as inhuman, in animal form, glowing red when lights shine on them, and in human form, possessing an eerie, animalistic shine. Perhaps most frightening is their alleged ability to evade detection and resist injury. In many accounts, bullets or blows that would fell an ordinary person or animal have little effect on a skinwalker. Traditional belief holds that killing a skinwalker is possible but extraordinarily difficult. Silver bullets are not the remedy in Navajo lore, but rather bullets or weapons dipped in white ash are said to be one of the few ways to fatally wound a skinwalker, and even then, the shot must hit a critical area like the head or neck. More often, it is believed that only a very powerful medicine man or spiritual healer can actually dispatch a skinwalker by turning its evil magic back against it. Otherwise, those who try to kill a skinwalker may find the witch seeking vengeance in return. This fearsome reputation of a near invulnerable, supernaturally swift, and cruel being makes skinwalkers the subject of dread among Navajo people. Role in Navajo society and taboos. It bears emphasizing how real this is to those within the culture. For the Navajo, witchcraft, including skinwalkers, is woven into the larger fabric of their spirituality and cosmology. It is not a disconnected myth. It sits alongside teachings of harmony, healing, and balance. One Navajo saying frames it succinctly: witches exist alongside medicine men as malevolent counterparts. Witchcraft is one of the ways. Just as there are healing ways, hunting ways, etc., there is a witchery way. Thus, witchcraft and stories of skinwalkers have long been a part of Navajo history and tradition. Because of the genuine fear they inspire and the belief that discussing them can draw them near, talking about skinwalkers is heavily taboo. Even within Navajo families, the topic might be avoided, especially at night or during certain ceremonies. As Dr. Adrian Keene, a Native American academic and writer, put it, these are not things that need or should be discussed by outsiders at all. That's how our cultures survive. In other words, knowledge about skinwalkers is guarded, shared only when necessary, and usually only with those who have the cultural context to understand it. This presents a challenge for outsiders seeking to learn about the phenomenon. Much of what is known in popular media comes from secondhand accounts. The rare testimony of Navajo who have broken silence, or the writings of non-Navajo researchers who have studied Navajo witchcraft. We must therefore approach such sources with caution. Nonetheless, from what has been documented, it is clear that skinwalkers occupy a cautionary role in Navajo society. They are the embodiment of moral inversion. The fear of skinwalkers and witches can serve to reinforce community values, such as the idea that grievous evil deeds will literally corrupt a person into a monster. They are also a go-to explanation for misfortunes. In traditional belief, if a string of tragedies or unexplained illnesses befalls a family, it might be attributed to a skinwalker's curse. This attribution helps Navajo communities make sense of chaos and serves as a reminder to uphold protection ceremonies and avoid behaviors that might invite witchcraft. In summary, within the Navajo worldview, the skinwalker is a real, present danger, an evil human who has obtained supernatural powers through vile acts. Skinwalkers represent everything that Navajo strive not to be: selfish, destructive, and in violation of the natural order. Understanding this cultural context is key before we compare skinwalkers to other shape-shifting legends or examine modern encounters. Only by appreciating the Navajo perspective can we grasp why this legend endures with such potency and caution. Shapeshifters in Native American folklore beyond the Navajo. While the skinwalker is distinctly a Navajo concept, it is not the only shape-shifting entity to haunt indigenous lore. Many Native American cultures have their own legends of humans who transform into animals or creature-like beings, often with sinister intent. These stories arise from vastly different peoples and landscapes, yet they share a common thread. They speak to the possibility of human beings taking on animal form to wield power or do harm. Below, we explore a few examples from across North America, highlighting similarities and differences with the Navajo skinwalker. With the Cherokee, they have the Raven Mocker. In the traditions of the Cherokee people of the Appalachian region, the most feared of witches is known as the Raven Mocker. Cherokee name Kalona Ailishki. The Raven Mocker is a malevolent, shape-shifting witch that preys on the sick and dying. According to legend, this witch can appear as a gaunt, deformed humanoid with features of a raven. It may fly through the night sky as a raven or invisible presence. When a Raven Mocker targets an ill person, it is said to steal the victim's life force, consuming their heart and thereby adding the remaining years of the victim's life to its own. After a Raven Mocker has visited a dying person, the inevitable result is that the person dies sooner, having had their life literally robbed. Only specially powerful medicine men can detect a Raven Mocker. Upon the death of such a witch, it's said that the sound of a raven's cry echoes loudly, and a black figure may be seen fleeing, thus the name. Like skinwalkers, Raven Mockers are associated with the darkest form of witchcraft and are strongly taboo to discuss. They differ in that they focus on extending their life by harming the vulnerable, and why they can shapeshift, often taking the form of a raven or an old person. They are not reported to turn into four-legged predators. Still, the course concept, a witch who supernaturally transforms and murders members of the community, resonates strongly with the Skinwalker legend. In the Great Plains and Great Lakes, they have the Bear Walker, Among certain Algonquin-speaking tribes in regions like the Great Lakes, there are traditional beliefs in witches who can turn into animals, such as bears or wolves. For instance, the Ojibwe and related nations sometimes speak of a bear walker, essentially an evil medicine man who walks at night in the form of a bear. A bear walker is said to use dark medicine to curse or kill enemies, sometimes by sending a spectral bear to do their bidding. In one account, a bear walker could fly or glide and would attack isolated cabins at night, clawing at the walls. This concept is strikingly similar to the skinwalker, a human using a bear skin or bear power to change shape. In fact, the Navajo skinwalker is often said to favor wolf or coyote shapes, but some tales include bear forms as well. The key difference is cultural context. Bearwalker stories are embedded in Algonquin notions of bad medicine and often used to explain sudden deaths or ill fortune, just as skinwalkers are in Navajo culture. Punishment for a caught bear walker could be death as well, paralleling the harsh justice for Navajo witches. In Algonquin culture in the northern US and Canada, there's the Wendigo. A discussion of Navajo shapeshifters wouldn't be complete without mentioning the Wendigo, or Wendigo, of the Algonquin peoples, Ojibwe, Cree, Innu, etc., largely in the subarctic forests of North America. Though the Wendigo is sometimes classed as a cryptid or monster in modern portrayals, it actually originates as a warning tale about cannibalism. A Wendigo is described as a gaunt, man-eating creature, often with desiccated skin or even patches of fur, and an insatiable hunger for human flesh. Crucially, Wendigos are not ordinary humans who deliberately practice witchcraft like skinwalkers. Instead, a Wendigo is born when a person succumbs to the ultimate taboo of cannibalism and is then possessed or transformed by an evil spirit. In other words, a human who eats another human may become something inhuman. Once transformed, the Wendigo is committed to wander the forests in winter, forever starving and seeking victims. Some legends say Wendigos can mimic human voices to lure people and move with the speed of the wind, aspects reminiscent of Skinwalker lore. However, the Wendigo shape-shifting is less controlled. It's often described as having once been human and now physically transformed into a monster, sometimes growing in proportion to what it eats in an endless cycle of hunger. The Wendigo legend has its own cultural role, likely a warning against the desperation that leads to cannibalism and a reinforcement of community cohesion in harsh times. It is similar to skinwalkers in that it involves a person turning into a horrific being that preys on others. But it differs in cause and nature. The Navajo skinwalker chooses evil for power. The Algonquin Wendigo is more a victim of an overwhelming supernatural curse triggered by a grave sin. Both, however, reflect the idea that extreme transgression breaks one's humanity and invites a supernatural transformation. In Mexican and Southwestern folklore, the Nahual is one such example. Broadening our scope slightly beyond the U.S., many indigenous cultures of Mexico and Central America have long-standing beliefs in shape-shifting sorcerers, commonly referred to in Spanish as Nagual or Nahual, from the Nahuatl language. A Nahual is typically a human, often a shaman or witch, who can transform into an animal form, such as a wolf, jaguar, owl, or turkey. In some Mexican indigenous traditions, for instance, Maya or certain Puebloan beliefs, these sorcerers might use their powers for either good or evil. However, the common folk understanding, especially after colonization, leans toward Nagual as witches who turn into animals, like coyotes or donkeys, to cause mischief or harm. This parallels the skinwalker closely. Indeed, anthropologists have noted that the concept of a witch turning into an animal is one of those archetypal ideals that crops up in many cultures. The Navajo Skinwalker is unique in its specific cultural setting and details, but it shares a family resemblance with these southern shapeshifter beliefs. For example, stories from rural Mexico or Mexican communities of encountering a strange animal that, when injured, later is found to have injured a local brujo, witch, mirror Navajo stories where shooting a coyote found on the property might later reveal a reputed witch found hurt or dead from the same wound. This kind of trope, the transmutability of witch and animals, widespread. In other native traditions, many other tribes have their own version of witches or shapeshifters, too many to detail exhaustively here. The Hopi people, neighbors to the Navajo, have legends of sorcerers who can change into animal form or send animal spirits to do their bidding. For instance, Powaka, a type of sorcerer, or the concept of Buha witches, sometimes mentions in Pueblo stories, their details are closely guarded. The Ute people of Utah, who live adjacent to the Navajo, have tales about evil medicine men as well. In fact, local Ute lore holds that portions of their land were cursed by Navajo skinwalkers long ago, a point we'll revisit when discussing Skinwalker Ranch. Even in the Pacific Northwest, the Tlingit and other coastal tribes tell of shamans who could turn into wolves. Some of these tales crossed over with settler stories of werewolves, though the context is different. And across the Bering Sea, Siberian shamanistic cultures also have a long tradition of belief in human-animal transformation. This is all to illustrate that the notion of shape-shifting is truly cross-cultural. In nearly all cases, however, such powers are viewed with deep suspicion or fear, unless strictly controlled within a ceremonial context. They are associated with witchcraft, tricksters, or punishment from the spirits. As one academic summary puts it, many indigenous communities, Cherokee, Hopi, Navajo, and others, shared folk beliefs of malevolent figures with supernatural powers who harm their own people, often leading to severe punishment for those accused. The Navajo Skinwalker is perhaps the most famous of these legends today, but it is by no means alone. It's worth noting that European colonial influence sometimes blended with these native stories. For instance, hold on. Give me a moment. All right, sorry about that. I had some moron in my household was playing music, and I can't have get a copyright strike because of some idiot. So I just had to take care of that. All right, here we go. All right, it's worth noting that European colonial influence sometimes blended with these native stories. For example, the term werewolf, a person turning into a wolf, was known to French colonizers in Canada and the Louisiana area. And it got mixed with native stories, yielding figures like the Rougarou in Cajun folklore. Essentially, a werewolf legend that has some overlap with local native tales of wolf-headed spirits. Similarly, English concepts of witches may have colored some narratives. However, the core indigenous shapeshifter legends long predate contact and have their own spiritual logic. Each of these legends, be it Skinwalker, Ravenmocker, Wendigo, Bearwalker, or others, arises from its cultural values and fears. They often serve as lessons or warnings against greed, cannibalism, straying from community norms, and other aspects, as well as explanations for the unexplainable, mysterious deaths, eerie sights at night, and other strange occurrences. In comparative perspective, the Navajo Skinwalker stands out for the particular intensity of taboo surrounding it and the very personal nature of its evil. A family member turning on family, a healer who was meant to protect becoming a curse. These strike at the heart of Navajo kinship. Terror of starvation and moral breakdown. The raven mocker plays in the fear of death and the unknown in one's final hours. All are facets of what one might call the shapeshifter archetype, a person who transcends the human form and in doing so almost invariably embraces darkness. All right, now we're going to move on to modern sightings and alleged encounters. Despite their foundation in age-old legend, skinwalkers and similar shapeshifters are not confined to the dusty shelves of folklore, at least not in the minds of many today. Especially in the American Southwest, reports of encounters with skinwalkers persist into modern times. These range from quick glimpses of mysterious creatures on desolate highways to harrowing confrontations on tribal lands. It is often difficult to verify these stories as they tend to circulate through oral recounting or anonymously on the internet. Yet the consistency in certain details and the sheer volume of anecdotes make them hard to dismiss outright. In this section, we compile some of the most notable alleged encounters and sightings in recent decades. These accounts should be taken with a grain of salt, but they illustrate how the Skinwalker legend continues to live in the present day and for those who experience them in reality. All right, so notable alleged encounters in the 1960s to present. Can people hear that in the background? All right. Anyway, all right. It sounds like it's not too crazy. All right. Continuing this. All right. So here's some notable alleged encounters, 1960s to the present. The upright laughing ram. A man in the Navajo Nation was doing repairs on an old ranch house one evening when he heard unnatural laughter coming from the sheep corral. Investigating, he found the sheep all clustered nervously in one corner, except a single ram that stood apart from the herd. To the man's shock, the ram was standing upright on its hind legs and laughing in a disturbingly human manner. As the man locked eyes with this creature, he realized the ram's eyes were not the eyes of an animal at all, but looked human. The bipedal ram then dropped back to all fours and strolled away into the night. The implication was clear. None of his sheep could do that, so this had to have been a skinwalker in disguise, caught in the act. This story, which has made the rounds in Navajo communities, highlights the skinwalker's purported ability to mimic not just form but human-like behavior, a laughing person masquerading as a sheep. Then there's the case of the high-speed pursuer on the highway. Numerous Navajo and other Four Corner residents have described a terrifying scenario. Driving at night on a remote road and noticing an animal, often a coyote or wolf, keeping pace with the vehicle. These creatures run astonishingly fast, sometimes on all fours, but occasionally reported to sprint on two legs like a human. One account tells of a large coyote-like figure running alongside a truck, matching its speed at 40 to 50 miles per hour, before veering off into the dark after a few minutes. In some versions, as the creature runs off, the driver sees it transform into a man, often a naked or minimally clothed figure, just before disappearing over a ridge. In one first-hand story from the 1980s, a family driving through northeast Arizona saw a black, hairy form suddenly leap out of a ditch as they slowed for a sharp curve. It looked vaguely human, but covered in fur and wore a dark shirt and pants. The creature slapped the hood of the car, then bounded away into the night. A few days later, at their home in Flagstaff, Arizona, they were awakened in the wee hours by loud drumming and chants outside. Through the windows, they glimpsed three dark humanoid shapes lurking just beyond their fence. The figures were described as shadow men and seemed unable or unwilling to climb the fence. After a tense standoff, they left. The family firmly believed that this was the same entity or entities from the roadside, essentially that a skinwalker had marked them and followed them home to harass or intimidate them. Such stories of hitchhiking skinwalkers, where an encounter on the road leads to paranormal disturbances at home, are surprisingly common in Navajo country. Then there's the story of stolen infants in Whirlwind. One especially eerie tale recounted by Navajo elders and even by a Navajo ranger, which is effectively a law enforcement official on the reservation, concerns a funeral wake for an infant that took place on the reservation. The grieving family had gathered around a bonfire at night, with the small body of the child wrapped and placed at the center of a circle of relatives. According to witnesses, as prayers were being said, a sudden gust of wind or dust storm arose out of nowhere, a vortex of dust devils that swept through the gathering. The mourners were blinded by blowing sand for a minute. When it settled, to their horror, the infant's body had vanished from the blanket. Given the Navajo belief that skinwalkers covet human corpses, especially of children, which might be used to craft powerful curses or potions, the immediate conclusion was that a skinwalker had whipped up the fake storm as a distraction and abducted the baby's remains. This story underscores how skinwalkers are believed to use weather manipulation or elemental magic as part of their tricks. It also shows the degree of emotional anguish and fear tied into these encounters. Losing a loved one is bad enough. The idea that a witch has literally stolen your deceased child for nefarious purposes is a nightmare beyond words. Such incidents reinforce why, in Navajo culture, strict precautions are taken during burials, and why the bodies of infants and respective figures are watched diligently until proper funerary rites are complete. Then there's the case of chased by a dusty white creature. Stanley Milford Jr., a Navajo Nation ranger, who later came to fame as one of the tribe's paranormal rangers, has shared a personal experience from his youth that sounds like it leapt right out of a horror movie. As a teenager in the late 1980s, Stan was driving home at night across the desert back roads of the reservation after seeing a movie in town. The road was lonely, and his truck's headlights cut tunnels in the darkness. Suddenly, he noticed something moving alongside him in the scrub. At first, he thought it was a horse galloping parallel to his truck. Odd, he thought, as there were no houses or ranches right there. Were there no horses or ranches right there? He accelerated. To his astonishment, the figure kept pace. When he glanced more closely, a chill ran down his spine. It wasn't a horse at all. It was a dusty white figure running on two legs, effectively a pale humanoid sprinting at incredible speed next to the vehicle. He couldn't make out details. The description, dusty white, suggests perhaps it was covered in ash or had a pale powder on it. But it clearly was not an animal. Stan floored the gas pedal, pushing past 60 miles per hour. The thing ran alongside him for a time before finally falling behind as the truck reached highway speeds. When Stan later learned more about skinwalker lore, one detail struck him. Skinwalkers are often said to coat their bodies with a fine ash or white powder. In some stories, it's the ash from burned human remains, a substance that purportedly enhances their power. The creature he saw was exactly dust-covered and pale, as if matching that lore. This incident left a deep impression on him, so much so that he included it in his memoir years later. Notably, he survived unscathed. Many skinwalker encounters end with just a fright, but he is certain that he crossed paths with something not human that night on the desert road. Then there's the case of the eyes in the dark on the Navajo reservation. Another category of encounters involves watchers in the night. People have reported strange, almost otherworldly eyes shining at them from cliff tops or mesas. In the Four Corners region, which includes parts of Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado, there are numerous sheer rock mesas and secluded canyons. Campers or sheep herders occasionally tell of looking up to a ridge under a moonlit sky and seeing a silhouette of a humanoid figure and two pinpoints of glowing red or yellow eyes staring down at them. When they call out or shine a flashlight, the figure might stride away with inhuman speed or simply vanish. One witness described such a figure as tall and extremely thin, almost glowing in the moonlight with eyes like embers. Others mentioned the sound of odd laughter or a distorted coyote howl right after such a sighting, implying the entity was deliberately toying with them. While these eye-shine encounters could sometimes be attributed to animals, many animals' eyes reflect red or yellow in light. The witnesses insist the shapes they saw were too large and human-like to be nocturnal animals. Within Navajo belief, a skinwalker in animal form will betray itself by its eyes. If you light it up at night, the creature's eyes will shine unnaturally bright, and in turn, when a skinwalker is in human form, their eyes might look like an animal's. Thus, these stories feed into that expectation, reinforcing the lore. It's important to note that contemporary Navajo people, especially younger generations, have a complex relationship with these tales. On one hand, many are raised hearing about skinwalkers from parents or grandparents, often told as warnings. Don't stray at night, skinwalkers will get you, is a refrain akin to stranger danger in some communities. On the other hand, some youth share skinwalker stories almost as a form of entertainment or bravado, swapping creepy encounters on social media or around campfires. However, even in those seemingly casual retellings, there's often an undercurrent of belief, or at least fear, that what they're discussing might be real. One anecdote, for instance, appeared in an online forum where a young Navajo man described late on a reservation road, or who described driving late on a reservation road and seeing a strange, hunched figure on the side. He slowed, thinking it might be someone in need of help, when the figure suddenly loped across the road in front of him. His headlights illuminated what looked like a gaunt, naked man covered in white powder or clay, with an animal skin draped around him. The man-creature glanced at the car with glowing eyes and then bounded into the sagebrush with astonishing speed. The driver didn't stick around. He sped away with a sense of dread suffusing the car. When he told his family, they urged him to see a medicine man for a cleansing ritual, as they feared the skinwalker's glance might track him. This highlights how even a single sighting can spur protective measures in the community, such as prayers or ceremonies to ensure no curse or ill effect lingers. All right. The Skinwalker Ranch connection. No discussion of modern Skinwalker lore could be or would be complete without examining Skinwalker Ranch, perhaps the most high-profile site associated with shapeshifter legends in recent times. Skinwalker Ranch, also known as Sherman Ranch, is a spiraling, isolated cattle ranch in northeastern Utah's Uinta Basin. The ranch is nowhere near Navajo territory. It's about 400 miles from Diné Bakaya, the Navajo Nation, but it lies adjacent to the Uinta and the Ouray Ute Reservation. Local Ute elders have long whispered that the ranch is in the path of the Skinwalker. According to some Ute accounts, during the 19th century, the Ute people had deadly conflicts with the Navajo, and Navajo shamans cursed the Ute land, unleashing skinwalkers as retribution. Whether rooted in genuine historical events or not, this lore led the area to be regarded with suspicion. Long before it was called Skinwalker Ranch, strange stories circulated around the basin, sightings of mysterious lights in the sky, such as UFOs, cattle mutilations, and unknown creatures. By the 1970s, regional news was reporting UFO flaps in the Uinta Basin, and by the mid-1990s, the particular ranch in question came into focus after a new family moved in and experienced a flurry of bizarre events. In 1994, Terry and Gwen Sherman purchased the ranch and brought their cattle operation there, unwittingly stepping into a hotbed of the unexplainable. The Shermans and their children soon began reporting an incredible array of phenomena that sounded like the greatest hits of the paranormal. Strange hovering orbs of light, some blue, some orange, that would zip around the property, frighten the livestock, or hover silently. Repeated episodes of cattle found mutilated in classic cattle mutilation fashion, with surgical like cuts, organs removed, no blood on the ground. Crop circles and large circular impressions pressed into the ground, poltergeist-like activity with objects disappearing or moving on their own, and sightings of frightening creatures. One of the most chilling first encounters Terry Sherman experienced was with an extremely large wolf, dire wolf, or wolf-like animal that appeared on the ranch one day shortly after they moved in. This creature was not immediately hostile. At one point, it even came up calmly and snatched a calf's head through a corral fence. Terry shot at the massive wolf with a rifle at close range multiple times. To his astonishment, the bullets seemed to have no effect. The animal simply recoiled slightly and looked at him, then trotted off uninjured. The Shermans later found a chunk of flesh, presumably from the creature, that smelled like rotten meat. But tracking the beast proved impossible. It vanished. It completely vanished. This bulletproof wolf incident strongly evoked the idea of a skinwalker, a large wolf that could not be killed by gunfire. The Shermans also described the wolf as having oddly intelligent or uncanny eyes. Over the next 2 years, they allegedly encountered other creatures. One was described as a predator-like being, invisible except for a silhouette or distortion of the air, much like the camouflage creature in the movie Predator, that emerged from a tunnel of light. Another was an object or creature that looked like a large shadowy humanoid crawling out of a floating orange portal in midair. And on several nights, they and ranch visitors saw red-eyed beasts watching from the tree line. At least one such beast was shot and seemed to fall off a limb, but again, it left no body behind. After 2 harrowing years, the Shermans decided to sell the ranch. They were frankly terrified and fed up with the losses of cattle and peace of mind. The strange tales of the Sherman family hit the news in 1996. A Utah newspaper, the Deseret News, and later a Las Vegas journalist, George Knapp, published the Shermans' accounts in a series of articles. The public was transfixed by the idea of a real-life haunted ranch where skinwalkers, UFOs, and monsters all seemed to roam. It is important to clarify the Shermans themselves used relatively down-to-earth language in interviews. Terry Sherman tended to call the creatures animals or predators and describe the lights without leaping to alien conclusions. The term skinwalker was popularized in part by Knapp's articles, tapping into the local lore that the area was cursed by skinwalkers, as well as emphasizing the spookiest angle for readers. The name stuck. In 1996, Robert Bigelow, a billionaire businessman with a keen interest in the paranormal and UFOs, bought Skinwalker Ranch from the Shermans for $200,000. Bigelow promptly installed a team of scientists and investigators on the property under the umbrella of his Las Vegas-based research organization called the National Institute for Discovery Science, or NIDS. This team included trained scientists like biologist Colin Kelleher and even U.S. Army Colonel John B. Alexander, a veteran who had investigated psychical phenomena for the military. For several years, from 1996 to 2004, NIDS monitored the ranch with cameras, sensors, and patrols, investigating any anomalous activity. The NIDS investigation yielded dozens of eyewitness accounts, though frustratingly little hard evidence by scientific standards. In the book Hunt for the Skinwalker in 2005 by Colin Kelleher and George Knapp, the authors chronicle over 100 incidents they either witnessed or collected from the Shermans and NIDS colleagues. These include repeated sightings of floating orbs, some of which seemed intelligently controlled and could instill fear or emit destructive effects on electronics, Encounters with large animals with piercing red eyes that were impervious to bullets, as noted above. Invisible forces that shredded a few cattle as if by extreme surgical precision. And magnetic anomalies where compasses and instruments would wildly fluctuate in specific spots. On the Skinwalker front, the bulletproof wolf was the clearest link, but at least one NIDS investigator reported something even more direct. Using night vision, he observed a strange, large creature perched in a tree watching the team. When he shot at it, it fell or retreated. Later, an extremely large, three-toed footprint was found below the tree, not matching any known animal. Some interpreted this as evidence as a crypto creature, like a Bigfoot type, but in Navajo terms, it could have been a skinwalker in yet another guise. However, despite these eerie reports, NIDS struggled to collect physical proof. Cameras set up would often malfunction right before big events. One especially head-scratching event was when 3 cameras covering an area all went dead simultaneously. Upon inspection, the wires had been neatly sliced on all 3, at the exact same time by something unseen. Such incidents felt almost like sabotage by an intelligent force evading documentation. After years of investigation, NIDS and its successor BASS had to admit no peer-reviewed evidence was obtained, despite the plethora of anecdotes. This led some skeptics to suggest the entire affair was either a product of local myth and imagination or even an elaborate hoax. We will discuss those skeptical viewpoints later. Nevertheless, Skinwalker Ranch greatly amplified the Skinwalker legend in popular consciousness. By the early 2000s, it was a fixture on paranormal radio shows, TV documentaries, and internet discussion forums. It tied together the Navajo legend with modern UFO lore and high strangeness in a way that was irresistible to many. Interestingly, the Ute tribe, whose reservation is next door, have largely shunned the publicity. Ute cultural ambassadors have mentioned that indeed their tradition speaks of that particular place as Tony Nia, filled with spirit or danger loosely, and that they seek to avoid it. They also use the term skinwalker in speaking to outsiders about it, though whether this is an import from Navajo stories or an independent concept is unclear. In any case, the ranch's reputation for shape-shifting witches became so well known that it eventually caught the attention of the United States government, a development as strange as the paranormal as the phenomena themselves, which we turn to next. Government investigations and involvement. It may come as a surprise, but the lore of skinwalkers and the paranormal events at Skinwalker Ranch did not remain purely in the realm of folklore or private curiosity. In the late 2000s, elements within the U.S. government took a covert interest in these phenomena, blurring the lines between legend and official science. This interest largely piggybacked on the Skinwalker Ranch incidents described above. Here we'll outline how a secretive Defense Department program became entangled with the Skinwalker legend and also touch on how tribal authorities have approached the issue. NIDS and the path to a Pentagon program. After billionaire Robert Bigelow bought Skinwalker Ranch in 1996 and set up NIDS, his team's spooky findings remained relatively obscure, aside from those who read Hunt for the Skinwalker. But one reader of the 2005 book turned out to be very influential, James T. Lakatsky, a Defense Intelligence Agency scientist. Lakatsky was intrigued by the reports of UFOs and shape-shifting creatures on the ranch. In 2007, he reached out to Bigelow and arranged a visit to Skinwalker Ranch. According to later interviews in a book Lakatsky co-authored, this trip yielded a personal paranormal experience for him inside the ranch homestead. Allegedly, Lakatsky witnessed a manifestation described vaguely as a strange technological apparition that convinced him there was something truly unexplained happening there. Following this, Bigelow and Lakatsky briefed a key ally, Senator Harry Reid of Nevada. Reid, who was already interested in UFOs and had known Bigelow for years, was alarmed yet fascinated by the talk of shape-shifting entities and unexplained forces at the ranch. Together with two other senators, Ted Stevens, who had his own UFO sighting as a pilot, and Daniel Inouye, Reed helped secure a discrete appropriation of $22 million in the Pentagon's budget to fund an investigation into advanced aerospace phenomena. This program, launched in 2008, was codenamed ALSAP, Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program, a deliberately bland name masking an exotic mission. Bigelow's research arm, now under the name BASS, Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies, won the contract to run ALSAP, meaning much of the $22 million went toward continuing and expanding the investigation of phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch and beyond. In essence, the U.S. government was now funding a study that included the Skinwalker mystery. One could say this is when Skinwalkers entered the realm of high strangeness meets national security. Under ALSAP, teams were dispatched to gather data. In early 2009, for example, after dealing with more straightforward UFO cases like the famous Navy Tic Tac UFO encounter, the program sent a group of active duty military intelligence officers to spend time at Skinwalker Ranch. These included a naval intelligence officer and two Marine NCOs. Their experiences were dramatic. One evening, the team observed what they described as a black void or portal on the property, essentially a mysterious dark mass in the air that filled them with dread on a primal level. They reported feeling as if something inhuman was watching them from that void. Disturbed but not finding a physical cause, the team eventually left Utah and returned to their East Coast postings. But the weirdness followed them home. In the weeks after, these men and their families became part of what's now termed the hitchhiker effect. Strange phenomena cropped up in their own homes as if something attached at the ranch had come home with them. They and their family members reported poltergeist activity, sightings of orbs of light inside their homes, and even on two occasions a terrifying apparition, a wolf-like creature standing on two hind legs, peering into their homes through windows. One Navy officer's wife and teenage daughters saw this bipedal wolf beast outside their Virginia home, a scene right out of a horror film, but documented in internal program reports. Such accounts were included in the program's findings and later publicized in the book Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, co-authored by Lakatsky, Kelleher, and George Knapp. However, the involvement of government in something as fringe as skinwalker hunting was not without controversy. Within the Defense Intelligence Agency, and later the wider Department of Defense, skepticism and ridicule emerged when word of ALSAP's scope trickled out. Some officials derisively referred to it as the Pentagon's ghost hunting or werewolf program. In fact, when ALSAP's existence was first revealed publicly via the New York Times in 2017, in a story mainly about UFOs, the Pentagon quickly downplayed it, using the alternative name ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, and focusing only on UFO videos. It became clear that certain Pentagon officials were uncomfortable with the paranormal aspects of ALSAP, feeling it would derail the credibility of legitimate UFO research. Luis Elizondo, an intelligence officer who took over a successor UFO program, explicitly stated they steered clear of Skinwalker Ranch in later efforts to avoid the woo-woo stuff that generated antibodies in the DoD. The Pentagon spokesperson, when asked about in 2021 about the Skinwalker-focused claims, simply responded no, refusing to confirm any paranormal research, and noted that the publication of such material carried no endorsements of its truth. Essentially, the official stance became that there was a UFO program concerned with aerospace threats, but not a government investigation into shapeshifters per se. Despite the distancing, the fact remains that government dollars and personnel were involved in probing the Skinwalker Ranch mystery for a time. This stands as one of the few, perhaps only instances where an indigenous legend, the Skinwalker, found its way into semi-official inquiry on federal levels. It's a testament to how compelling and alarming the ranch's incidents were that seasoned military folks would entertain the possibility of encountering something truly out of this world or out of this realm of folklore. All right, let's take a breather. Let's see what comments people have. Bear with me while I go all the way back. All right, what do we got? So Overlander BC is saying, I saw a video of McDonald's getting caught by a 3-letter agency for having hundreds of body. Ugh. Yikes. Okay, so Jalal says the show Dead Files always saw the Native American Indians as working to protect against the freaks of nature. Every time, all the strange spiritual creeps they protected. Okay, Overlander BC is saying Skinwalkers are a really difficult one for me to really just believe in, mainly because it's heavy on location, specific conjecture, and very light on actual data. I have no doubt there's something there. Hey, Janie Mashburn. Let's see. So it says, welcome. I watch Tour with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano for 4 to 5 years to saw your show. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and Overlander BC is continuing his comment, but what it actually is, I have no idea yet. S. Kildy is saying, this sounds so similar to some European dark magic. Yeah, it definitely does. Overlander BC is writing, I suspect the label Skinwalkers is applied to more things than it deserves to be applied to, thus leading to the confusion that makes it all seem too broad or a set of variables to be solid true. Hi, Jason. Roger Claiborne is writing, Wendigos were also hungry natives donning animal skins to hunt easy human prey. Johnny Topside writes, most native cultures don't like talking about the legends because it scares them. Overlander BC is saying, example, Dogman, in my opinion, is a werewolf, but has also been caught, brought overseas to the U.S., and engineered as super soldiers, and we see them here and call them skinwalkers, but they're not. Okay, so Jason H. saying, isn't Skinwalker the Western name actually called something else? Yeah, I covered it in my intro, but yes, I can't pronounce it without reading it out loud. And I'm not looking at it right now, but Skinwalker is the Western name. Now there's the Navajo have a very specific word for it. It's not Wendigo. I'll tell you what it is really quickly. Just have to find it. So it's a Yi Nald Lushii. Yi Nald Lushii. That's the word from Navajo. I probably shouldn't say that too much out loud. Sorry, I'm just finding my place. There we go. Okay. All right. Hey, Kason. Good to see you. Okay. John Kurtz is saying Navajo Nation in Arizona includes Monument Valley. Overlander BC is saying Wendigo is a native name for big shapeshifter beings in Canada, according to Travis Mustus. Oh, thank you. I guess you're saying I'm the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Hopefully that's what you're saying. I appreciate it. So Roger Claiborne is saying when game is scarce and crops fail, some get desperate, and that's why natives don't like talking about them. How you doing, Miss Tammy? Okay. Okay. Overlander BC is saying, my opinion, the Wendigo are the red-haired giants. Some same as the giants of Kandahar, same as biblical Nephilim giants. Jalea Jalal is writing, based on the insatiable appetites and the cannibalism by reports by the Nevada Paiutes, that I can agree with. And she also says Carlos Castaneda also reported the whole dynamic in his many books. Hey, Woo Riders GG. He writes, hello, Sean. Hope you and your family are doing great. God bless. You too, brother. Okay. Hey, greetings, Philip. Good to see you. Jalei Jalal's writing, there have been many videos of deer being skinwalker. If it is obvious, because it is very zombie quality exhibit. Hey, Gray Owl. He writes, hey, Sarah Papa. By the way, I've been exchanging comms with a cat who's researching on the fabric of reality file. I advocate and congruently have lobbied for presentation here in the thought space. Okay. Okay, he said yourself and that Through Glass Darkly Broadcasting are already within the resources he takes in, and he is greenlit for bang on interview, discussion with yourself. It's all greenlit on your switchboard too. Okay, yeah, just send me background on my email. Tim Mothman, hey, how you doing? Happy Sunday. So Jalei Jalal saying, okay, so deer, sheep, bear, rabbit reported the tall whites use the animals too, canines, and what else? Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to get through this relatively quickly, folks. Yeah, I just covered it. I'm probably like way behind on these comments. Okay, Roger Claiborne is writing, I had some pet wolves a few years ago. My biggest was about the size of a Great Dane, but he had a brother the size of a small pony. Little bit of dog makes them big. Yipe. Yikes. Yeah, Knapp's book was a good read. Okay, Spiritual Ascension is saying when selling their soul to the darkness, they are often given two different routes, the vampiric blood drinking route or the wild animal, otherworld cryptic wild animal route. Yeah, Skinwalkers of the Pentagon is a good book. I recommend folks take a look at it. Sorry, I'm just getting through everybody's kind of some small talk. Yeah, S23 is running Blue Beam holographic psyops technology. I don't know. I doubt it, but maybe. Yeah, I already did an episode mentioning all the demon names. Yeah, that was not smart. Okay. Oh, wow. Writer DG's writes, guess what? My mother got invited to be an extra in an upcoming Kevin Sorbo movie. Free room and board and pays a little over $100 a day doing filming. Nice. Yeah. Apologies for going through this. Hey, Dusty. All right, let's get back. Oh, no, another one. All right, let's get back to tonight's regularly scheduled program right now. All right, Navajo Nation Rangers, paranormal encounters. Meanwhile, in Navajo lands, there's also been an official investigative interest, albeit in a different manner. The Navajo Nation has a special law enforcement division known as the Navajo Rangers, similar to park rangers or wildlife officers, but with broader duties on the reservation. In the early 2000s, two rangers, Stan Milford Jr. and Jonathan Dover, were assigned a unique task force to investigate reports of paranormal occurrences on Navajo land, ranging from UFOs to Bigfoot and including skinwalkers. This unusual mandate came out because the community members would occasionally come forward with frightening experiences, and rather than dismiss these, the Navajo leadership decided to address them seriously. Milford and Dover, both of Navajo heritage, with Milford also part Cherokee, took on this role and earned the nickname the Paranormal Rangers. One of their first cases around 2010 involved an elderly Navajo woman who reported a skinwalker skulking around her remote homestead, or Hogan. Initially, a younger officer laughed it off, but the Rangers captain reprimanded that attitude and sent Milford and Dover, who had open minds, to investigate properly and respectfully. In interviews, including a 2022 Unsolved Mysteries episode and a Fortean Times article, Milford and Dover have described responding to scenes where alleged skinwalkers were seen. They approach these cases like any other, looking for footprints, gathering witness statements, and occasionally finding puzzling evidence, such as oddly spaced tracks or animal prints that stop abruptly. They even sketch out suspect descriptions when possible. In doing so, they have collected a sort of confidential dossier of skinwalker lore that meets detective work. Milford has shared one particularly grisly incident that local medicine men recounted to him. A group performing a burial of a stillborn baby was disrupted by a sudden dust storm, after which the infant's body was gone. This is the same story we discussed earlier. This was essentially filed as a likely skinwalker theft. Another account from the Rangers involves the discovery of cache sites where suspected skinwalkers stashed their medical paraphernalia, including bags of bone, dust, effigies, and animal skins. One such stash was reportedly found concealed in a rock crevice, wrapped oddly in cloth. While these findings are hard to verify publicly, they indicate that the Navajo Nation police force treated witchcraft related crimes as a reality, at least to the extent of investigating and keeping records. By 2023, Stanley Milford Jr. published a memoir titled The Paranormal Ranger, detailing 20 plus years of his experiences looking into these cases. This marks a fascinating intersection of traditional belief and modern policing. The Rangers had to balance not violating cultural taboos, for instance, not directly confronting or shooting at suspected skinwalkers unless lives were in danger, since they could provoke revenge or community anger, with trying to protect people. They recount that many full-blooded Navajo officers simply refused to get involved with these cases. The fear of skinwalkers runs that deep. Being of mixed blood and perhaps a bit more secular, Milford and Dover felt they could handle it, though even they admit some cases gave them nightmares. In one event, they were called to a home where a family was plagued every night by stones thrown at their roof from darkness and scratching on the walls, classic poltergeist witch harassment symptoms. The Rangers staked it out and caught sight of a cloaked figure darting between bushes. They didn't manage to catch it, but the activity ceased soon after, as if the skinwalker knew it was being watched by law enforcement. Such stories underscore that government investigation into skinwalkers haven't just been the purview of Washington, D.C. At the grassroots level, tribal governments and police have long dealt quietly with these matters. Traditional Navajo courts of the past sometimes executed confessed witches, and even in modern times, community-led justice can occur in extreme cases. Though officially murder is illegal, no matter the accusation, there are rumors that a skinwalker caught in the act might not make it out alive. Outside of the Navajo Nation, there aren't formal skinwalker files in state or federal agencies that we know of. But occasionally, skinwalker lore overlaps with other phenomena that do get official attention. For instance, cattle mutilation investigations. In the 1970s, the FBI was tangentially involved in probing livestock mutilations in the West, while they focused on potential cult or criminal explanations. Local rumors often blame witches or skinwalkers for those unexplained cow deaths. In that sense, tidbits of the skinwalker story exist in various archives, albeit labeled differently. Additionally, Skinwalker Ranch has generated a trove of data, thermal videos, radiation readings, etc., that former investigators claim to have, though only select pieces have been released publicly. The ranch today is owned by a new private owner, Brandon Fugel, and has even been the subject of a History Channel reality show, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. That show has recorded some odd events, but it straddles entertainment and investigation, and we must be cautious with its content. In summary, government and investigative involvement in the Skinwalker phenomenon spans from tribal authorities respecting and examining community claims to billionaire-funded scientific teams, all the way to hush-hush Pentagon programs spurred by eerie encounters. It's a remarkable trajectory for a piece of folklore, moving from campfire scary stories to congressional funding. Yet, for all this attention, skinwalkers remain elusive. Neither the Navajo Rangers, nor NIDS, nor the ASAP scientists managed to capture definitive proof of the skinwalker. No skin cage shapeshifter or clear photograph emerged. This leads us into an analysis of what could be behind the skinwalker legend and the challenges of investigating it. Analysis, folklore, fear, and the facts behind the legend. After surveying the rich mythology, the spine-tingling encounters, and even the official probes into skinwalkers, we arrive at the crucial question. What is really going on here? How much of the skinwalker legend is founded in truth and how much in cultural perception or misinterpretation? Analyzing the skinwalker phenomena requires walking a fine line. On one side, we have the cultural truth for the Navajo and many who grew up around Four Corners. Skinwalkers are absolutely real in the sense of belief and as an explanation for evil happenings. On the other side, we have the scientific skepticism that demands empirical evidence for such extraordinary claims. Bridging these is not easy. Here, we will consider several facets: cultural significance of the skinwalker, the difficulty of investigating such phenomena, alternative explanations, rational or otherwise, and the impact of modern media on the legend. So, starting with cultural and psychological significance. From a social science perspective, one can view the skinwalker as a manifestation of cultural fears and norms. Within Navajo society, which has historically been communal and based on clan relationships and mutual support, the idea of a witch, a selfish individual who harms their own kin for power, is the ultimate threat. It symbolizes internal betrayal. In times of hardship, drought, disease, colonization, the specter of witches could arise as a way to make sense of why bad things were happening to good people. Someone among us is using curse forces. The witch plague of 1878, or the witch purge of 1878, is a clear example of a society under extreme duress after Bosque Redondo captivity, turning to a witch hunt to expunge perceived internal enemies. While tragic, this event has echoes in European and African history as well, where witchcraft accusations often spike during crises. Thus, skinwalker lore in part functions as a social regulator, discouraging jealousy, greed, and desire for vengeance, since those emotions, if acted upon magically, literally create monsters in the cultural view. It also provides a measure of control or explanation. Something goes wrong, crop failure, a sudden death. Identifying a skinwalker, rightly or wrongly, gives the community an action to take, whether it's seeking a healing ceremony or confronting the suspected witch. From a psychological angle, belief in skinwalkers can also amplify perceptions. A person traveling alone at night who firmly believes in skinwalkers might misidentify a mundane animal as something supernatural, or interpret a rustling branch as pursuit by a witch. Fear can be self-fulfilling in that way. It's notable that in many skinwalker stories, fear and panic are central. Some witnesses describe being in a sort of heightened state where everything felt ominous, which could be a natural adrenaline response, or if one entertains it, potentially induced by the skinwalker, possibly induced by the skinwalker intentionally. Either way, the interplay of fear and belief is strong. Then there's the skeptical view and challenges of proof. On the flip side, those demanding scientific proof of skinwalkers find themselves empty-handed. Despite decades of anecdotes, no one has provided a verifiable photograph or physical evidence of a human shifting into an animal. There are no forensic remains. A slain skinwalker does not transform back into a person in any documented case. This lack of concrete evidence fuels skepticism. Renowned skeptic James Randi once offered a sarcastic award to Robert Bigelow for essentially chasing phantoms at Skinwalker Ranch. Researcher Robert Schieffer argued that many of the ranch's most dramatic claims came solely from Terry Sherman, with no independent verification, raising the possibility of fabrication or exaggeration. Schieffer even speculated that the Shermans might have spun tales to intrigue a buyer like Bigelow, thus offloading a struggling ranch for a profit. The Shermans did sell relatively quickly. However, Terry Sherman continued to work on the ranch for Bigelow as a caretaker for a while, suggesting he wasn't simply running away from it. Other skeptics note that many supposed skinwalker sightings could be explained by ordinary animals or hoaxes. For example, the bulletproof wolf might have been a large stray dog or wolf hybrid. Adrenaline fear can make it seem like it's shrugging off bullets, when in reality, bullets can miss or hit non-lethal tissue. The weird footprints found could be misidentified animal tracks or outright pranks. For instance, someone with wooden Bigfoot feet. As for the glowing orbs and UFOs, skeptics propose everything from military flares to psychological suggestion. The Journal of Scientific Exploration, which is actually sympathetic to studying anomalies, published a 2023 piece by Barry Greenwood that criticized the Skinwalker Ranch saga as always in the business of selling belief and hope, pointing out that after so many years, not one clear piece of evidence has emerged, which to him suggests the phenomenon might be illusory or folkloric in nature. Indeed, Greenwood noted that those predisposed to believe tended to see something, whereas skeptics on site saw nothing, implying a powerful role of mindset. So could skinwalkers be nothing more than legend and misidentification? From a strictly empirical viewpoint, one has to acknowledge that so far there's no proof otherwise. but dismissing it entirely might be premature. One reason, the sheer consistency of certain motifs in independent accounts. For instance, the fast-running, almost teleporting wolf or coyote figure has been described by Navajo in the 1980s, by a family in the 2010s on social media, and by military personnel in 2009, all independent, yet all describing essentially the same thing. If it's hallucination, it's a strangely specific recurring one. Additionally, Skinwalker stories among Navajo predate modern media, so they're not merely a product of Hollywood. Could there be a rational paranormal explanation? Some have theorized that Skinwalkers, if real, might involve a combination of psychological warfare and sleight of hand by actual human perpetrators. For example, a Navajo witch might use chemicals or herbs to induce hallucinations in a target, blowing special powers through the air, akin to witchcraft poison, known in Navajo as ade or corpse powder. Under such influence, the victim might believe they've seen an animal that isn't there. There's also talk of hypnotic suggestion or the use of ventriloquism to throw voices, mimicking a relative's voice calling, etc. These skills, combined with the natural stealth and knowledge of the land that a Navajo witch might have, could create the appearance of the supernatural. It's notable that traditional natives or narratives sometimes describe skinwalkers using bone whistles or animal calls to incite fear. Entirely real sounds that trigger conditioned terror. Another angle is the occult or supernatural one, not provable by science, but taken seriously by many in this milieu. That view posits that skinwalkers operate in a spiritual dimension as much as the physical. They may employ evil spirits or curses that affect witnesses' perceptions, essentially glamour or illusion magic. This could explain why cameras fail, the phenomenon doesn't register or is one step ahead, why bullets often miss, the skinwalker is protected by charms, and why those who go looking often find nothing. The skinwalker shows itself only when it chooses. While these notions don't satisfy a scientist, they are internally coherent in the cultural context. Medicine men say that to combat a skinwalker, one must use spiritual methods, not technology. For instance, a singer might perform a protection ceremony, Hos Huji, for a family under witchcraft attack, restoring harmony and effectively immunizing them against the witch. Conversely, to identify a skinwalker, some Navajo healers conduct a spiritual ceremony, like Analushii Bayuian, to reveal the witch's identity in a ritual way. These practices continue quietly for those communities. That is the meaningful response, not setting up trail cams in the woods. Then we have media influence and modern evolution. One can not ignore how modern media and the internet have amplified and perhaps distorted the skinwalker legend. With the rise of Reddit forums, YouTube horror channels, and TV shows, skinwalkers have become a subject of pop culture creepypasta, in addition to their sacred, dreaded status in Navajo land. Unfortunately, much of this outside portrayal is sensationalized and often inaccurate, which deeply concerns Navajo commentators. For instance, a 2017 episode of Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures visited Navajo Nation caves and claimed to find signs of skinwalker rituals. But Navajo observers and Navajo Nation press blasted the show for staging evidence and spouting nonsense, noting that it was laughable and sad and an amateurish negative representation of Navajo culture. Non-Navajo ghost hunters, lured by the Skinwalker Ranch stories, sometimes trespass on reservations hoping to glimpse a skinwalker, which is dangerous for all involved. If not physically, then culturally, it's deeply disrespectful. Even the very use of the term skinwalker has broadened in the public lexicon, sometimes mean any spooky humanoid in the woods. And there's a whole subgenre of internet horror where people attribute national park disappearances to skinwalkers, often conflating them with unrelated tales of pale crawlers or Wendigo-like creatures. This dilution irritates Navajo traditionalists who see it as a kind of cultural appropriation of their fears and taboos for entertainment. Yet, in a twist, Some younger Navajo have also engaged with the memification, jokingly referring to strange noises at night as maybe a skinwalker trying to scare us. Perhaps as a way to take control of the narrative or lessen the fear through humor, it's a complex interplay. So, for serious researchers, it's crucial to avoid the trap of cheap thrills and instead portray skinwalkers in context. They are not just native werewolves for a spooky story. They are embedded in a people's history and present reality. As we have shown, even government scientists got entangled, possibly because the stories were convincing enough to blur their own lines between scientific and supernatural. So that begs the question, what might skinwalkers truly be? A range of interpretations might be presented. So, from the perspective of the strict skeptic, all instances are hoaxes, misidentification of animals, or psychological phenomena, mass hysteria, the power of suggestion, etc. Skinwalkers exist only as a belief, not as literal shapeshifters. This view demands we find rational explanations for each case. So, example, the bipedal wolf in Virginia was likely a large wolf dog standing on hind legs, peering in, not uncommon behavior for a curious canine, and the family's fear magnified their account. The Sherman's bulletproof wolf may have been a rabid or exceptionally tough wolf that simply didn't react normally to injury, or Terry's shots missed vital organs. The blue orbs could be ball lightning or earth lights tied to geology, and so on. Then there's the folkloric middle ground. Skinwalker phenomena are real in the sense that they are experienced, but those experiences might be manifestations of something like collective thought forms or archetypes. For instance, decades of belief could create a sort of tulpa in mystic terms, an entity that isn't objectively there but can affect perception. Some paranormal researchers have floated the idea of a trickster intelligence at places like Skinwalker Ranch. This overlaps with indigenous ideas of trickster spirits like coyotes that delight in confusing humans. It's as if some phenomenon might tailor itself to cultural expectations. Navajo see skinwalkers, others see ghosts or aliens, but maybe it's all the same phenomena wearing different masks. This is speculative, but it fits the almost theatrical quality of some events. The precise timing of camera failures at the ranch, as if something wanted to tease them but not be caught. Then there's the believer, the traditional Navajo perspective. Skinwalkers is exactly what the Navajos say, which is using evil spiritual power. They are human beings, usually, who through ritual and depravity can project their consciousness in animal form, or actually transmute for periods of time, and also summon entities like spirits of the dead or creatures to assist them. They truly can curse people, explaining sudden illnesses or bad luck, and they can be standing right next to you in a ceremony, and you wouldn't know, because by day, they could be normal community members. This view doesn't necessarily conflict with all the evidence. It simply asks one to accept a worldview where magic is real. It justifies the lack of proof by noting the skinwalker's power include invisibility technology and evasion. These witches have been doing this for generations without being caught, after all. It might be wise to present all these interpretations and allow the audience to ponder. The story of skinwalkers is compelling, not just for the fright factor, but for what it says about the clash and blend between ancient belief and modern inquiry. Even in 2025, we have scientists with PhDs scratching their heads over tales from ranchers that sound like witchcraft meets sci-fi. We have lawmakers funding studies on things straight out of folklore. We have indigenous officers trying to simultaneously honor their heritage and apply a forensic method to something their culture tells them not to even look at. In some, the Skinwalker legend sits at an intersection of worlds, the Navajo versus the outsider, the past versus the present, the tangible versus the intangible. One analytical point to consider is why Skinwalker stories seem to be increasing in popularity. Some suggest it's part of a larger fascination with the paranormal in uncertain times. Others point out that as Navajo people share more of their culture on their own terms, through blogs, books, etc., There's more accessible info about things like skinwalkers, which once were little known outside the tribe. However, Navajo voices often caution that what is shared publicly is just the tip of the iceberg, devoid of the deeper context. To truly understand, one would need to be part of the culture, so there will always be a layer of mystery that outsiders cannot peel back. This is perhaps as it should be. Finally, we should address the ethical dimension. The Navajo consider it unethical to seek out skinwalkers or attempt to become one, even just to see if it's possible. It's strongly believed that even talking too much or too loudly about them, especially at night, can draw their attention. Thus, in analyzing skinwalkers, there's an inherent paradox. To study them deeply might be to invite them. A traditional Navajo might say that by doing a 2-hour podcast on skinwalkers, you're bound to attract their curiosity in turn. As a precaution, half jokingly, half seriously, some broadcasters who covered the topic have often taken to burning protective herbs like cedar or sage in the studio, or having a Navajo friend offer a quick blessing just in case. While that might not be scientifically necessary, it's a nod to cultural reality of how skinwalkers are viewed. So, in conclusion, the tale of the skinwalker is as rich and complex as the cultural landscape from which it arises. We begin with a journey into Navajo antiquity, a world where every action has spiritual weight, where good medicine and bad medicine duel for the soul of the people. In that world, a skinwalker stands as the ultimate warning of what a person should never become: a selfish sorcerer cannibalizing kin and kinship for dark power. We saw how this legend is not just a ghost story to be trotted out on Halloween, but a living belief that has had real consequences, from 19th century witch purges to quiet acts of justice in canyon bottoms, to enduring fear in the eyes of Navajo children who are told not to roam after dark. Moving outward, we found that the concept of shape-shifting humans spans continents and ages, from the Algonquin Wendigo to the Cherokee Ravenmucker and beyond. These parallel narratives underline a human fascination and terror with the idea that our own kind could secretly be other. It's a metaphor for distrust and the unknown within society's ranks, whether that other is a witch, a werewolf, or a skinwalker. The message is similar. Evil might wear a familiar face. In modern times, skinwalkers leapt from the hogans and mesas of Navajo land to the global stage, thanks largely to the bizarre saga of Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. What played out there in the 1990s and early 2000s reads like sci-fi. Hardened scientists on midnight vigils, unseen forces toying with equipment, congressionally funded agents encountering werewolf-like apparitions in suburban Virginia, and a ranch now gated and guarded as if some great secret is kept within. The fact that skinwalkers are mentioned in a Pentagon-connected context at all is something that would have been unbelievable just a few decades ago. It shows that sometimes folklore is not as far from the halls of power as we think, or at least that those in power can be as intrigued and baffled by these mysteries as anyone else. Throughout our exploration, we maintained a dual respect for the cultural sovereignty of the Navajo, not prying deeper into ceremonial aspects that are meant to stay secret, and acknowledging the deeply held taboos, and respect for the intelligence of the audience, presenting the facts and sources so you can draw your own conclusion. We cited historical records, interviews, and research to ground each claim. The narrative of the Skinwalker is thus supported by a lattice of credible testimony and writings, from Navajo voices to anthropologists, from library archives to news articles and government statements. We have preserved those citations not just as footnotes, but as a reminder that truth can have many facets. One person's truth might be another person's tall tale. By seeing where information comes from, you can better weigh its validity. So what is the final verdict on skinwalkers? In a literal sense, the evidence for humans physically turning into animals remains elusive. But in a broader sense, skinwalkers are undeniably real, as cultural fact, real as an idea that causes real fear, and real as a framework through which many have interpreted frightening experiences. Whether those experiences were confrontations with actual evil sorcerers, or misinterpreted encounters with wildlife, or manifestations of something beyond our current scientific understanding, is ultimately an open question. For the Navajo, no proof is needed. Skinwalkers are part of the moral universe, lurking at the edges where the firelight of the community fades into the darkness. For outsiders and investigators, the Skinwalker legend challenges us to expand our horizons, to accept that our world may still hold untold mysteries, and that other people's way of understanding those mysteries are as valid as our own. In closing, a 2-hour discourse can scarcely do justice to centuries of whispered stories and lived beliefs, but it can illuminate the contours of the Skinwalker phenomenon. Picture, if you will, a quiet night on the high desert. The stars are brilliant above. The wind rustles sagebrush and juniper. You sit by a dim lantern, and an elder begins to speak in a low tone, telling of a witch who runs as a coyote. You feel a prickle on your neck. Out in the darkness, beyond the lantern's reach, there could be anything. A coyote yips, perhaps just hunting rabbits, or perhaps signaling to its brethren that human talk of skinwalkers is happening here. In that moment, the rational and the mystical blur. The story has done its work. You are left with a sense of wonder, a touch of fear, and a respect for the unknown. And maybe, as the elders say, that is enough. Sometimes it's best not to look too hard into the darkness, lest something in the fire looks back. And remember, don't whistle at night. In terms of sources, I think it's important to point out that this research drew on a variety of sources to ensure accuracy and depth. Key references include Navajo Nation commentary and academic works on Navajo witchcraft, historical accounts from the Denver Public Library and Legends of America, modern journalism from The Guardian and military.com on government programs, and firsthand interviews with Navajo Rangers and community members via KSUT Radio and Fortean Times. These and other citations embedded above provide a roadmap for further exploration, as well as verification for the events and claims discussed. In a topic where rumor and hearsay can run wild, such sourcing is our tether to veracity. Finally, remember that every culture has its other, its shapeshifters and boogeymen, but also its guardians and wisdom keepers. The Skinwalker legend carries warnings, but also affirms the Navajo values of harmony, kinship, and courage. In a way, the enduring fascination with skinwalkers in the wider world is a chance to appreciate those values and the resilience of a people who have not only survived hardship, but also kept their stories alive. Whether one takes those stories as literal truth or metaphor, they have the power that commands respect. And so, as we end our deep dive, we pay respect to the Dene Bikaya, the Navajo homeland, and to the elders past and present who guard its secrets. Each listener can decide what to believe about skinwalkers, but after we've explored, one thing is clear. After all of what we've explored, one thing is clear. The idea of the skinwalker, the lesson it carries, will continue to walk on all fours throughout the collective imagination for many years to come. Haganeh, farewell, and stay safe out there on the night roads. All right, that ends at least the prepared part of tonight's regularly scheduled program. And need to drink a little bit. All right, so what did you all think? Let me get back to so many comments. Okay. All right, I'm just trying to get through this relatively quickly. Yeah, Philip Blair said stealing from a skinwalker sounds like a bad idea. So I just interviewed someone named Donovan Yazzie, who lives on the Navajo Nation, and his grandfather did exactly just that. So buckle up. That episode appears in a few weeks. So okay, it's going through. No, so Brandon. Okay, so Jalai's writing. Brandon's interview on Sean Ryan last summer was the best of the whole year, in my opinion. I think you're talking about Brandon Fugel. Skinwalker Ranch? I'm assuming that. Oops. Hey, Rob. Rob Young. Cheers. Good to see you. I don't know. Jason H is saying, doesn't the rock of the mesa make weird magnetics? Maybe. Uh, Gray Owl writes, the ranch may be considered to some types a tiny island of sanity and otherwise terrifying wasteland of anarchy, otherwise known as our version of reality. Yeah, spiritual ascension is, I think, probably hit right on the heart of the matter. She writes, or the veil is just thinner there. Jason H said, didn't the Navajos, actually, the Utes said not to dig in the ground around there. Sorry, folks. I'm just trying to go through this as fast as I can. Meh, cultural appropriation. Yeah. Yikes. Michelle writes, had one in my home. Do say more. That is creepy as hell. Oh, is there? So Philip Blair writes, there's a Skinwalker like episode of the X Files. Yeah, it's possible. Roger Claiborne said, I imagine calling troublemakers or tribe members that had something mentally wrong with them could be called skinwalkers to get rid of them. Okay, Overlander BC is saying, Sean, I'm really curious what you think. What is your opinion about skinwalkers? What are they? They're people. That's my understanding from my interview with Don. They're medicine men. They're like bad medicine men. All right, I think I am all caught up. We have about 10 minutes left. Oh, the one thing I forgot to say at the very beginning, that script, while I generated the prompt, AI generated the script. Okay. I that's like my conscience requires me to say that every episode because if I write something myself, I'm not going to tell you I'm using AI because I'm not, right? But in this case, I used AI. So that's all. What else is on folks' mind? We have about 10 minutes left. I am working on getting out another like short story collection if anybody is interested. Um, I just finished it up today. I am working on the cover tonight, and then I might do a hardback version with some illustrations that are not mine, but the various illustrations that were done of my stories over time when they were published in various venues that I have permission from the artist to put in there. But anyway, yeah, we know. Spiritual Ascension doesn't like AI, but for those of us who don't have enough physical time in the day to do everything that's required of us, it's it can save us a lot of time on various tasks. It's faster than searching the internet or Googling if you have questions and things like that. Oh, nice. So for folks who want to watch the Skinwalker like episode of the X Files, it's called Shapes. It's from season 1, episode 19 in 1994 of the X Files. So thank you, Philip, for sharing that. Oh yeah, thanks, Jalal Jalal, for everybody for sitting through. Thank you, spiritual. I didn't take that personally. I understand where you're coming from because it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt more people than it helps. Is my guess. But the people that it helps, it's going to disproportionately help them. You're going to see people literally becoming companies, right? Like people like corporations are people, right? It's literally going to be that way because there's so many things you can do. You can generate contracts. It just multiplies your effectiveness across a number of different fields. But you kind of have to know what AI is capable of and what it's not capable of. You could also get yourself into a lot of trouble if you don't know what you're doing. Yeah, it can help you or it can hurt you, right? Would I class Google's AI? I mean, it's not a large language model, right? It's a search engine, and it's no longer that good of a search engine because it's been DEI'd to death, basically. Spiritual Ascension writes, indubitably, Sean. Yeah, yeah, Gray Owl, that's fair. She writes, Sean, I find that your data point of in comparing results of your public radio footprint to the almighty YouTube dripping with irony. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, that's across like several YouTube channels. It's not just my channel, right? Because this pipes out to Facebook, Twitter, multiple Facebook accounts, not just my own. Even what's that? What's that thing called? Even to Twitch. I have it piping out to Twitch, not my Twitch account, but somebody else's. So, by the way, the data point he's talking about is I typically get 40,000 views a month on YouTube for one radio show. I get between 500 and 600 views / listens, etc., across a variety of different platforms. That's why there's irony. Yeah, Roger Claiborne is writing a lot of uncomfortable historic accounts out there. They get ignored because it doesn't fit. Yeah. Yeah, there's I haven't experimented with that, but I'm working on maybe another channel where I just use AI video to animate my stories. So stories that I wrote, no AI at all, but then I use it to produce illustrations and videos, and then maybe some, I might consider using some AI music. All right, I should put this across the bottom. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share. Please do so. Um, uh, well, that's YouTube for me. YouTube probably has a better reach than radio. So Philip Blair's writing, wow, I didn't know radio still has a great reach than YouTube. Again, it's across radio, it's across like SoundCloud listens, Spotify listens, it's across a bunch of different platforms. And that aggregates up to about 500 to 600,000. Yeah, it feels like someone's stacking the deck. That's why I always ask people to check to make sure they're still subscribed. Yeah, the trick is not to like or dislike stuff, just be with it. Presence is what we lack. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, how are we doing on likes, by the way? Does anybody know what I'm at on YouTube with likes? See if we can pump that up really quick. Oh, that was not cool, YouTube. Yeah, so I'm just trying to see how it's doing. Eh, not the best. How are we doing on likes? Oh, it's gonna make me fight for this one. Ah, we're only at like I only see 32 likes. Those are rookie numbers. You gotta get those numbers up, guys. You gotta get those numbers up. Now, granted, that's probably an historical number, but yeah, just smash the like button. Keep smashing the like button. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Yeah, see, it works when I ask people to do it. So I thanks everyone. Thanks for doing that. Okay. Gray Owl's recommending the Danny Jones podcast with the Google whistleblower. The aforementioned company is stacking the deck of reality in some very terrifying. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Oh boy. Yeah, it is pretty good for only 24 watching. All right. I should have asked the audience or folks what they want to see next week because I just kind of, on like Thursday, I just pull something out of my you know what. Nice. Just punch it right in the gut. Punch that like button right in the gut or kick it right in the jimmy, whatever you prefer. Just knock that son of a bitch out. So thank you, Johnny's Topside. He punched the like button right in the eyes. Oh, mimetic viruses. Ooh. Especially with disclosure. There's a whole mimetic virus vibe behind that. So that's some crazy stuff. That's not yeah, that's a good idea. All right. I think I am at the end of my reign here. So thank you, everybody. Uh, thank you for showing up, watching the podcast, and we're listening on the radio. So God bless. Have a great week. And I will see you next Saturday. For folks who are just joining, I'm doing a day earlier because the show is doing well enough that they want to move me to a uh, higher potential slot. So 7 p.m. Pacific time on Friday. So I will see you all next week, Saturday this time. So good night. God bless. And have a wonderful week.